Thanks for joining us for another week of Take Two. We actually almost canceled it because there was literally nothing going on politically this week to talk about. We were like, nothing to talk about.
Snoozer of a week.
I know. I feel like we could do this entire podcast talking about the impeachment inquiry, but we're not going to. We've got some local issues.
You mean Jim and I just agreeing on everything?
Yeah, I know, boring.
Yeah. It gets boring.
I know, so we got to talk about some local issues. And in the last legislative session, I know that Jim was very passionate about the issue of conversion therapy, and it just didn't get through. The governor, I think, in his wisdom, took it out of the political realm, because really should it be political, and gave it to Doppel. And so they're looking at the advisory boards of whether or not this is something that is fitting medical treatment, I guess is what you would call it. They've had some hearings. Jim,
look, whatever
is this an okay way to go about it?
They ought to be able to convert. I mean,
that is not the conversion therapy we're talking about.
Not.
No, totally different conversion.
This is where they take homo kids and try to force feed them being straight. Is that the conversion therapy you're talking about?
Do we have to call them homo kids? I feel like there's got to be a nicer way
That's
to
a tough way to describe it, but
that's acceptable within the LGBTQI community. I mean,
did you add another letter? Did you just add another letter to this?
No.
Do you know how hard it is? We didn't get it. I think you said an I after the Q. Did you?
No, I can't play the tape.
Right, I'm telling you, you can't.
There's a new thing, the University of Utah this week, actually finding heroes in the gay community, and they're calling them queeros. Yeah. So that's another word you should get used to hearing.
But look, is this why are we even talking about this? To take a child and force them to sit through therapy that says, you no longer are straight, but you must be homosexual, is wrong. It's absurd. No one would even think about it. We shouldn't do it, and it does unbearable damage to children. It ought to be stopped. Doppel, Kroppel, the legislature, whoever. It's a basic moral right. And let's get this done and move on.
Have you had personal experience with this? Did you have family, parents, teachers that tried to pray the gay away, send you to counseling to ungay you? Or how does that work?
I went to see a counselor when I was at BYU as a young 17-year-old.
It obviously didn't work.
And the guy said to me, he was a clinical psychology student, so they kind of farmed off the kids to the kids. And he said, look, you're the luckiest son of a bitch in history. I said,
oh my gosh, this is 2 weeks where we have to beep you.
I'm quoting. I'm quoting. I was offended. I was 17. I was faithful. I was great. And then he said, look, there's 19 of us in the clinical psychology program here. I'm the only Jew. I'm from Brooklyn. And I'm telling you, you're perfectly fine. Don't ever come back and see me again. And whatever they do, don't listen to them, and for goodness sakes, don't go into the basement of the Joseph Fielding Smith building, because they're doing reparative therapy there. And I listened to his advice, and that was that. I never took any of that stuff.
Huh. How did it make you feel?
Well, I just said to him, why? What is going on? And he said, just trust me, don't go there. And I said, I'm going there unless you tell me. And he told me what reparative therapy. Then it was shock therapy.
Yeah, that sounds
And
painful.
So, thank goodness I didn't go, but a lot of BYU students did go. Look, let's get out of this. Let's not even have this discussion. You can't sit children down and tell them that they're not really heterosexual, that if they pray about it long enough or they think about it, they can be homosexual. It doesn't work. It shouldn't work. And if you want to destroy a kid and if you want them to commit suicide, tell them they can change, and then present them with that. Let's just end the discussion. Let's get this done.
Should we just end the discussion and get it done? Or should we just say, hey, if you're an adult, you can go choose to do whatever you want. If you want to try to fix yourself, change yourself, do whatever you want, that's fine. But children, off limits.
So I think that it's an issue that we could, if people could come together, get around a table that have different opinions or different concerns, I think that good information can drive good decisions. And I think that bill, frankly, that sat on the board at the legislature last session, I think there could have been agreement and success in finding a statute that could have, or a bill that could have passed. But it's a hard one, admittedly. I'm not a doctor. I think Doppel had heard testimony from people that felt differently about the topic. I think the science, I think the people that are familiar with this field need to weigh in. And good information will ultimately drive good decisions. And we are understanding more about the space. The only thing I would say is this. If we are looking at those things that we think are through clinical research and through better understanding of human beings, we can land on better therapies, I'm all in. But where I think things start to get confusing for me is where we say, well, someone's gender, we'll never know. It is one of these things that we're not going to be able to determine one way or the other. The consequences of that premise in terms of scholastic sports or who can participate in things that are separated by gender just becomes so confusing for society.
But that's not
so all I'm
conversion
saying,
therapy, though.
no, it's not conversion therapy. But what I'm saying is, if conversion therapy is based on science and methodology and clinical studies, if we can just carry that along to know how to act in this space generally, because I think it's one that we all have to learn and understand. And some of it comes across as confusing to the general public. And what people do when they're confused is they just throw up, the walls, and they don't want to understand.
Final question.
That's my
esteemed friend.
Yes.
And
you're the
former
interviewer now.
speaker.
Okay, go.
12-year-old Greg, how many therapy sessions would it have taken
to make
for
you
the
kiss, Jim?
therapist to make you
know.
gay?
Listen,
Give
I'm not
me a
defending
break.
it. I'm not
Stop it.
I'm not defending conversion therapy in any way. But what I'm saying is, whatever method we're using to come to some strong best practices here, I think we need that same effort more broadly in this topic of gender identity,
All right.
because I think it's confusing the populace.
It is. I agree. We got to talk about it more.
I think
Yeah.
it needs to be beyond just this topic here.
I'm
That's
glad
all I'm
we're
saying.
talking about it and letting people have their say. I heard some sound from it yesterday, and there were people who said, I went to this therapy. It fixed me. I was able to marry a woman. We had children. We have a happy family. But from my own,
I see those people in bars all the time.
But but from my non-clinical research,
Gay bars.
yes, all of my friends who've tried to do that and get married and have children, it ends eventually. It's painful for everyone, and then they realize that it just doesn't work. You can make anything work, and they did make it work for as long as they can, and then they realize, for happiness for everyone, it's got to end.
I'm going to tell you that I think as I've gotten older and I've watched, I've got a daughter. My oldest is I think one of the saddest things I'm watching are when people hide how they feel or what their attraction may be. They try to mainstream, they try to get married, they have children, and then there's this kind of crossroads where they come to terms with how they really feel, where it breaks up marriages or it breaks up families. I would far, far prefer for the person that my daughter would fall in love with, that there be a genuine and honesty about people and how they feel, and not feel like they have to hide these things, because I don't see that. I see that hurting so many more people if those are things people keep inside or feel that they can't be honest about. So for the betterment of our whole society, we really need to be honest about those things, and so I'm all for having that dialogue, but you got to bring people around the table. It's not going to be one side or the other is going to win the day.
All right, we have a couple other local issues to get to before I let you two have at it on the impeachment issue.
The quiet before the storm.
I do want to say that voter registration deadlines, they're coming up. The mayoral elections in a lot of cities are coming up. They're important elections, even though we don't have a presidential election or senators we're electing. Get signed up. Get ready to vote. We don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, or none of the above.
We do.
Oh, we do?
Okay. Well, I care.
Okay. I'm
Greg
sure
Hughes
everybody
too.
cares, but I just be involved. Go get signed up,
Yes.
because the election, honestly, is not that far away. We're almost October, which is literally barely over a month away till Election Day. Kristen Cox, I know this is an issue that Jim wanted to talk about. If you don't know who she is, she's one of the cabinet members for the governor, and she has come up with fiscal policy. Is that a good way to describe what she does?
She's head of the Office of Management and Budget. She has tremendous power across the
That's
state.
right.
Personally, she's an inspiring woman. She's blind, and she has been in the cabinet for many years.
And she uses
and
the
she has a
principles
great story.
Principles of the theory of constraint. And theory of constraint is what they're using in budgets for the governor's budgets, and whether it's working or not, it's hard to say, but our government coffers seem to be doing okay generally here in Utah.
You get up to the legislature, and you find a lot of people who have these theories that they set their life on.
Yeah.
You know, Kristen has one. Legislators sometimes have them on education, or they've got them on this, or they belong to that. These principles come and go. Some of them are good, some of them aren't. They get out in the marketplace, a lot of them die, whatever. And I'm not saying people don't believe in them. I'm just saying that some of them work, some of them don't.
But the reason why we're bringing it up is because the Tribune did a good investigative piece. If you want to read it, it's lots of pages long. But they're saying that she's using those principles she's using inside the government for a side hustle. That's what the kids call it these days, of sorts, where she's got a consulting firm where she's using what she's doing in government. We can decide whether that's right or wrong, and using some of the proof of performance type stuff, putting it on her website, and then using that probably as an exit strategy when Governor Herbert goes away. Is this a bad thing, a good thing?
Look,
is it questionable?
Blame Gary Herbert. Cox is out there hustling the best she can. She can't get by on her $236,000 a year salary, and so she's got this part-time gig. And people can have a part-time business. If they want to sell Amway or do something out of the governor's office, it's okay. But when their top two lieutenants, who are also in their office, also are in that private company, and when they have a weird association with an Israeli company that comes to town and has seminars and charges government agencies tens of thousands of dollars to come, it starts to get smelly. And I'm going to tell you, it's part of Governor Herbert's pay to play. It's just every corner of state government you look in. You know what? You want to be the director of Office of Management and Budget? Fine. But you got a lot of power, and state agencies will do what you say because you have great control and power. And when you say, really, you ought to sign up 10 people for this seminar or not, that is tremendous power. You know what, Kristen? You believe in this? Quit the state. Go do this. Have a good life. But there's too much of this on the highest levels of state government where people are peddling whatever they're doing or whatever land deal they've got.
Pay-to-play situation?
I believe it certainly has all the earmarks, and if the Democrats had any guts, they would have demanded that the legislature look into this and call some hearings and subpoena people and say, what are you doing and who's getting the money and what is the relationship between this company and that company? But I don't see that happening.
Greg, is this an issue? It's something that honestly I hadn't learned about until I read this article in the Tribune.
It's a sad situation on a number of levels. Number one, Kristen Cox, she has been one of the rising stars or one of the most respected members of the governor's cabinet. She was a lieutenant governor candidate in Maryland under the Republican Michael Steele when he ran. They didn't win, but she was the lieutenant governor candidate on that ticket. She ran Department of Workforce Services before she came into the governor's Office of Planning and Budget. She's been I wouldn't say an adversary, that sounds a little bit tough, but the governor's budget and his ideas for how the budget should look in a given year, and the Speaker of the House and the legislatures, we've clashed over different items, line items, how the budget should come together. So she has been someone I highly respect. I understand what I've been told when I read the story is that everything she had done, and she does, one of the things she's known for is her demand for return on investment of public dollars. How are those dollars leveraged? She has a system that she believes in. It's been used mostly in the private sector. She wanted to take those private sector principles to government, which is a great thing. Her advocacy for this on a private side, it's my understanding that any of that effort had been cleared by and vetted by the governor and his attorney and their staff, and that it was deemed appropriate for her to do. The story comes out, and the part of the story that I was disappointed in is I think she should have, if that is the case and it was cleared, much stronger defense coming from the governor's office. They should have been explaining why they believed this was absolutely appropriate and defending Kristen Cox in terms of how she has laid this out. But I thought they were a little quiet on that. And it was only a one-day news cycle. The only part about that that's sad is that you have a part-time legislature where we have to have our day jobs in terms of our, and you'll find a narrative many times where if a lawmaker is working, there's a scandal attached to that, but we do have to work because our part-time lawmaker status doesn't pay any bills. So sometimes I see more outrage on the legislative side in terms of the businesses that we do have than what we saw in that story. But I think the governor's office could have done a better job walking the public through why that was an appropriate endeavor and how they had vetted it and had approved it.
All right. One last thing before we get to the exciting topic of national news. I thought this was interesting this week. In one of my newscasts, we were reading it. I had to go look up more on this, but Utah, according to a new Wallet Hub study, is the 9th best state for teachers, and we always hear that we're number 50 for education, and we still are. When you look at the spending per student, 49th for the student to teacher ratio. But right now, with all these raises that have happened, right now Utah teachers are 9th best in the nation with how much they're making, and also how much it compares to cost of living and their possibility for getting raises or moving up. Greg, I'm assuming that you're going to say this is good work from the state.
It was on our watch, right, Jim? This is the work. These are the budgets we put together. They're taking the survey from right
These
now.
are largely community
high five,
budgets,
Jim.
though, because the
That's what we
districts.
did.
Yeah, we're not going quite that far.
You, me. We worked on this. You know we did.
And people are going to be watching probably some of their taxes go up a little bit because these are happening in local
We
jurisdictions
didn't do that
as
part.
they're happening.
That wasn't
yeah.
us. We didn't do that part.
So, but teachers are getting paid better. So is this good that we're number 9 or still terrible because we're still funding education too lowly?
It's a challenge. It'll always be a challenge. We have more students per taxpayer. We have our sources of funding education, even property tax being such a significant engine for funding education around the country. 67+% of the state of Utah is federal land, which you do not see a revenue from. We have those inherent challenges. That said, the economy is doing well. We cannot ignore or not pay attention to compensation of teachers, or else these educated workforce will go and pursue careers in other places, and we cannot afford that. So it's a have to have. We have to see that compensation increase, and so it's critical. We always could stand to use more funding. We always get a good return on that investment because we are
cheap.
We are challenged in terms of how we find that revenue, but I'm proud of that. I'm proud that we're seeing our compensation for teachers increasing as it should. And every year, just so people know, more kids enter kindergarten every single school year than seniors that graduated. So every time you have a graduating class out of our high schools, know that we have more children entering kindergarten. And it was that way for the 16 years I served in the legislature, and no one sees that slowing down. So just to hold serve, just to spend as much as you did the year before, you have to have more tax revenue to do it.
Yeah.
So it is a tough deal.
This is why we have part-time kindergarten, which is a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But should we be pleased that we're at least at number 9 in the nation on this, or should we only look at the number 50?
I looked at the survey. I clicked it through. We're not number 9 in salary because they gave a heavy weight to the 2 other factors in that. One of them being the
this is a comparison to what you're wearing.
Comparison.
If you live in New York or San Francisco, you're obviously got to make more to live.
Right.
Yeah.
But the other part where the numbers are skewed a little bit has to do with how Utah teachers can move up the chain. You know, how they can
Step in lanes.
Yeah, and you know why that is? It's because of a shocking statistic that's bad for teachers. After 5 years, only 43% of our teachers get out of the teaching business. So we're back to getting a whole bunch more rookies in there, and yeah, that leaves us a lot of upward mobility.
Do you think it has anything to do with Utah culture, though, where there's young women who go to college, they get their teaching degree, they teach for a few years till they have children, and they go home, and maybe not because of dissatisfaction at the job, but they did it until they had children and then they want to stay home? Or is it really because everything's poor?
I
don't
know.
okay.
That's part of it, but you know what the other part is? Teachers unions like to give the highest compensation to those who've served in the career the longest. That means that those that are brand new to the profession are being paid the least. And if you wanted to try, so if you want to try across the board set amount of dollars, which we've done in the legislature, the teachers union comes and opposes. If you want to give $8,000 to every teacher, which we know that would be a higher percentage for brand new teachers, hopefully to keep our young teachers choosing being an educator as a career. The teachers unions have come to those committees to oppose that bill because they want to see those that have been there longer receiving the most money, and those that do not enjoy the seniority of membership receiving the least. And so that plays a factor.
Why would they
too.
do that?
It's a tenure thing. It's the
mean,
mentality.
The same with firemen and policemen a lot of times.
Yeah.
You know, in the city, they want a big raise, but they want most of it to go to people that have been there 10 or 11 years or more. Where the problem we're having is recruiting
new ones.
people to get there.
And there's not
I wish the UTA would grow some. I mean,
UEA?
UEA.
Oh,
and
the
UTA.
UTA has its own set of issues.
You
okay,
just switched topics on us pretty quick there.
But if you look at the last year, the states that have skyrocketed out of being 50th for a generation are the states that looked the legislature and the governor in the guts and said, no, we're going out. We're striking. We are not providing the kind of education that we know we can. We're not getting the support. We're 50th in spending, and we are going on strike until you don't shoot for a few more dollars, shoot for getting us out of 50th place in the nation. And you know what? West Virginia did it. They got a huge pay raise and they got a lot more money. Colorado and Denver did it. New Mexico did it. You look around the states that have, look, the legislature, they're never going to wake up. They're never going to go, oh yeah, let's,
you two were a part of this problem.
Let's get you out of 50th. Look, we're still at 50th, Greg.
This issue becomes, when you talk about states that have strong teachers unions, just like I just described, if you had an across-the-board raise that the unions oppose, it is because there is power in collective bargaining. If we promised that we could raise the tide lifts all ships, and we could raise it for everyone, if it took the role of collective bargaining or the power that unions have to collective bargain and decide how those dollars are spent, they would oppose it. I'm telling you that is a power discussion and not a how do we get education inside the classroom discussion.
Just
and
one more thing,
Okay,
if I can.
thing,
All right,
quick.
really quick. The state has $1.1 billion sitting in the education fund now. Money that should have, during the session, have been turned over to education. But through their machinations, the money is there. To say the money isn't there, through their machinations.
Is this rainy day fund?
In the education fund. No, it's sitting there. But they didn't want to split that up because they've got designs on that. They want to throw it into the general fund so they can buy all the toys that the legislature wants. There is enough money in education. Watch what's happening now as they're looking at reappropriating where all the money goes, because what their plan really is to go into that piggy bank education fund and rip that earmark where all the income tax goes to that. So spend that over $1 billion where it's supposed to be spent on education, and play around with taxes all you want, but leave the income tax where it belongs in education until we're at least 48th.
All right, we've made it to the exciting moment where we can talk about the impeachment
pretty
process. No, it was
I had
riveting.
a retort. I just
You
decided
did.
to let it
All
go.
right.
I'm just thinking that's a
I know.
snoozer.
We could literally talk about that for an hour, but I do want to check on some of those funds because I think education here in the state is important. I feel like the country is just like, we got done with the Mueller report and we're doing it again. So anyhow, impeachment inquiry. I thought it was interesting before the phone call was released, before the whistleblower report was released, that Nancy Pelosi, who had been very reticent to go forward with the inquiry, came out guns firing, which I thought she looked lovely. When she knows she's going to be on camera, by the way, she always has the best dresses, best makeup, well coiffed, looking good behind her flags. But I felt like she came out ready to convict. And this is definitely an issue that we need to hear about. But I thought it was, and I think she's peddled it back in the day or so, but we really should be looking at this holistically and saying, we need all the information, let's ask the questions, and if impeachment needs to happen, let's do it. If not, let's not. But it seems like she kind of came out guns firing. He's already been convicted, let's lock him in jail. Was that a good plan?
It's a 3-day-old story. She comes out firing. Now it's a ready, fire, aim approach. I think it was a political calculation. Nancy Pelosi is not dumb. She's not politically naive. She was losing her caucus. Many of the Democrats in the Congress wanted and were ready to impeach on the Russian collusion theory or narrative, and she waited because she wanted to see the information come out, and the information never justified the impeachment process. That frustrated a lot of members of her caucus. There were people that were beginning to really complain because, let's face it, this president, there have been critics that have wanted to impeach him since the day he was elected for no other reason than he was elected. And this has been something they've always wanted. So when this story hit, without any information, without us even reading the transcript of the discussion, she was losing a caucus if she didn't jump in and say, okay, we'll start. And think about it. They didn't have a vote. She just simply said, we're going to start this proceeding. It was meant to placate an angry or a contentious caucus that was starting to push on her. And as the information has come out, I think that there's no there. In fact, not only is it not an issue that you could impeach on,
Why do you say that? Without, I
if
mean,
if you read the transcript of the discussion that Donald Trump,
partial transcript, we should say, because it's not a true transcript.
You'll have people that say, well, it could have been a fake transcript. I mean, there is no end to what you can do to undermine what you're hearing. But
that was definitely a transcript. When I read it, I could actually do Donald Trump's voice when I was reading his words.
I'm telling you. So you're reading this. He notes that we want to be helpful. They're having a general conversation, and page 4 of the transcript, if you read it.
Yeah.
And by the way, thank you for posting it. That's how I actually read it.
Oh, you're welcome.
He says, I've heard terrible stories that you were forced to fire your top prosecutor. We want to deal with anti-corruption, and that sounds like a terrible story, the way that played out. What he was referring to is what we've seen on video, or many have. I'm surprised how many have not seen, is the story shared by Biden, Joe Biden, that when he was vice president, he went to Ukraine and he told the president of Ukraine, you have 6 hours to fire that prosecutor, who, by the way, was investigating the company for corruption that his son Hunter sat on. You have 6 hours to fire that prosecutor, or we're taking our check, our foreign aid, and we're leaving town, and you'll get none of it. And they said, and this is Biden's description, you're not the president, you can't say that. He says, call him. Go ahead and call the president. Inferring that the president's well aware that this is an issue that they're going to address. That story on its face, if you're worried about President Trump in that transcript referring to this issue and wanting to know more, or saying this doesn't sound right, then the story he's referring to is very problematic. And when I hear media go, oh, he was cleared on that. The Inspector General said that the whistleblower had political bias. There's no one saying that what was happening here in that conversation he had was impeachable. Only his political opponents are saying this.
It is an issue because it is his political rival. But the question is, then, should we just throw them both out? Like, throw both babies out with the bathwater?
Just make it fair. I mean, all I'm saying is, if you think what Trump said was wrong, then you can't look Vice President Biden in the face if you think that's wrong. I'm just saying, I don't think inquiring about that was wrong. Certainly, if nobody is saying that what Biden did originally was unethical or inappropriate, if that's not, all you have to do on this test, if life's a two-way street, take Biden, put the name President Trump. Take Hunter Biden and put Donald Trump Jr. or Eric Trump, and tell me that the story that President Biden shares is one that the Democrats would be like, oh, there's nothing to see here. That was cleared. That's fine. It's selective outrage, selective logic, and the heart of it is, politically, they want to impeach this president. That's it. That's all this is. It's all it's ever been.
And I should note before we get to Jim that all of our congressional leaders here in Utah have come out and said something to the extent that they are deeply concerned about what they've read, but they're waiting to see what happens. I know Mitt Romney saying that he wouldn't give advice to the House Speaker. This is definitely...
Mitt Romney says he's very troubled.
Yes.
Lapdog Chris Stewart says, what do you want, Trump? Whatever you want.
He's on the Intelligence Committee. He reads more than we do.
He is on the House Intelligence
Committee. Let me point
Committee.
out just a couple of things here. We have in Bluffdale, you've been down there to that? We have
the
a
giant
facility.
center. Yes.
I've driven by it. I haven't been in it.
Every phone call, every text,
True.
every single email, every communication in the world by everybody passes through there.
They hear all the rude things we say.
Every single thing, anything that is sent electronically anywhere in the world. So let me ask you this. How would you feel about a President Hillary Clinton sitting down with the president of another country?
Oh, I think she's ready to run
Russia,
again, so we might have her.
and say, you know what? Give me everything you've got on opponent XYZ or all the Republican senators that are going to run against me. How would we feel about that? I'm telling you, if we've got this, the Russians have it, and who knows, probably the Ukrainians. I mean, if the North Koreans can blow up Sony electronically, I'm saying foreign intelligence agencies have phone conversations and texts and the rest. As soon as a president of the United States goes and says to a foreign leader, give me all the dirt, what position? Well, it doesn't matter. That's kind of what he said. He said, do an investigation on Biden and let me know. And not only that, I'm going to put you in touch with our Attorney General, and I'm going to put you in touch with my own personal lawyer who's been there a lot, and we want you to get all of that dirt ready for us. And by the way, there may well be, I've already held up your the money that Congress has given that you desperately need to save off the Russians. And he didn't say quid pro quo, but anybody would know what he was saying. I'm saying put yourself in the position. Once we say any American president or any American senator or any American powerful person can say to any foreign leader, give me everything you got in the opponents, holy smoke.
That
Where
does,
the path that leads down
it
is
does raise
bad.
serious questions, and I think that's why we're having this inquiry. And it's not for me to say whether it's an impeachable offense or whether it's
for
this
me
how
to say it is.
You can definitely say I cannot. But the question is then, you can decide for yourself whether the president did something wrong or not. If we were to rewind back those years, I don't know if it was 4 or 5 years to when Joe Biden did this, we were talking about pay for play earlier. Is that what this was and what he was doing to the government?
I'm not even going to get into what happened with Joe Biden.
It's a two-way street.
That is Greg's interpretation.
Oh, it's not
everybody
even, it's not
in the EU went also to this corrupt president of the Ukraine at that time because this prosecutor was covering things up. So as a part of 9 different presidents and prime ministers from Europe, Joe Biden went and said, fire that person. We need somebody in there who's honest. So it wasn't exactly as Greg described it. But it's not about that. It's about Joe Biden Jr., or whatever his name is not aspiring to the White House. That we've got a guy who's in there. Do we want our president selling out the country by saying,
Jim,
give me the dough?
Look,
I want all my presidents squeaky clean, and I'm not sure how many of those we've had.
Here's the thing. When you read that transcript, there is no way there's any heavy-handed discussion happening there. He is concerned about that issue. He says, it sounds terrible to me.
He says,
now, let me tell you something. You've got 3 senators, Democrat senators, who wrote a letter, a strongly worded letter to the Ukraine president saying, we are going to withhold funds if you do not address in a more serious way the corruption in your country. They are not mincing words, and that is not upsetting anyone. You do have a president and a candidate that went to foreign intelligence. It's called the dossier. It's called going to the British intelligence, to international intelligence, getting FISA warrants, all being done to monitor and to surveil a candidate and a campaign.
Get back to the issue.
I'm telling you, no, this is the issue.
The president is on the phone.
That was celebrated as,
look,
we have intelligence information about this president.
Let's suppose all that is
it's
wrong
all
and
happening.
bad.
It was happening.
How do you
okay,
Biden said some bad things and whatever. Here we have right there the president, the very president of the United States, saying, give me dirt on my political opponent.
No. So should Ben McAdams now, our lone Democratic congressional leader, be asking for this impeachment inquiry, supporting it, and moving forward with it?
I'm okay with whatever Ben decides. As for me and my house,
we shall impeach.
I will tell you this. When you are the president of the United States, you don't work for the intelligence community. The intelligence community works for you. It will be a sad day in this country if the corruption or the concern that you have about what's going on happens to be a political potential opponent, that somehow gives them a free pass and you can't say their name out loud. Meaning, if you're telling me you heard something that was disturbing and it happened to be someone that was seeking the presidency, so now you can't ask the question, you can't inquire, you can't get to the bottom of what sounds like $1 billion of money withheld unless the prosecutor looking into this man's son is fired on the spot or in the next 6 hours. If that is concerning, but a potential candidate or opponent, you can't inquire, that is not a world we want to live in.
You're talking about Biden again. Let's talk about the president. The president wasn't interested in corruption. What the president said is, go get information on Biden. He didn't say, I'm very interested in corruption in your country. He said, do me a favor and go find out if Biden was corrupt.
Would that not have been corruption in our own country if our vice president at the time was doing that?
I don't know. Look. Give me a document. Give me a document put out by the White House. There's no dispute. The president says that was the transcription.
He didn't say find anything on this guy that I want to go after. He's saying this situation sounds terrible to me.
Find out about the Biden thing.
But the situation shouldn't be ignored because he wants to run for president.
Is what he said.
He was involved in it.
All right, boys. Here's a question for you. Is the impeachment going to go through? The inquiry going to happen? Will Donald Trump be impeached in your mind?
He'll definitely be impeached, which means the House will take action.
Correct.
The question is how many more Mitt Romneys, people of integrity, are going to look at the facts and not look at all the political blah, blah, blah. And that remains to be seen. If the Senate doesn't concur with the House, then the people will get a chance in a year to make the final decision.
That's true, and I guess it would be the first time you ever had, if it were to happen, an impeached candidate, because Bill Clinton was on his second term when that happened and couldn't run again. And we should clear this up. Just if you're listening, I'm guessing you're political and you understand this, but we had people calling in complaining after I said that Bill Clinton was impeached a couple days ago. He was impeached. As you explained, the House impeaches, and then it actually takes the jury trial in the Senate to kick you out of office. So we'll have to wait and see how this happens. How do you see this playing out? Will the president be impeached? Will the inquiry go forward?
When the midterms occurred and the Democrats took control of the House, many said that's the impeachment count right there, because they've been wanting to impeach him since the day he got there. It's very revealing that a story that is not even a week old is the one they've gone all in on, because they know the longer they wait that the information will not buttress a straight-faced inquiry. So they're going to do this. They're going to push it for their political purposes. That is why 2/3 of the Senate, when this hearing on the articles of impeachment are brought to them, it will never pass even a laugh test. It simply will not.
If the president's impeached, will Republicans choose another candidate and have him step aside, or will we go with Donald Trump? If it were to happen, this is all.
Donald Trump, with federal caps put in place, has raised $13 million on the outrage of the American people that he's even being put through this process because it's so blatantly political, without merit. He's raised a lot of money from a lot of people because people know he's being attacked, and that this was the attack from day one. This, I think...
This has been a good fundraiser.
I do not think... I think the Democrats in the Congress will lose seats over this because of how they are playing politics with the Constitution and how this process is supposed to work. And I don't think this is a good day for the House or for Speaker Pelosi. And I think she was left with no choice. She was losing her caucus. They wanted to impeach on anything, and she had to throw, red meat to the wolves that were out there. So it's not a good day for Democrats. I'll tell you that.
All people have to do, get the documents, read them for yourself.
I have them on my Facebook page.
I've
read them.
I think you
and
should.
You will see the kind of morals of this man are not the values that Utah purports to accept. And I give Mitt Romney all the credit in the world. He's usually wrong on most everything, but he's had the courage to stand up and say, you know what? This ain't right.
Is it courage, or is it the possibility that if an impeachment were to happen, that maybe he could step in and save the day and finally run for president again?
I mean, you're talking.
I'm just wondering. I think
if the Constitution is hanging by a thread, that Mitt would come in and save it. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's what I'm saying. That there's people online who say that maybe he's in the Senate because he was hoping, maybe. I'm not saying
that's
this is
so
my
cynical.
belief. That is cynical.
You never know.
You just wouldn't believe that, right?
No, but you brought up a great question. But Greg, maybe you know the answer. You know Mike Lee, but you're a constitutionalist. So if he gets impeached and the Republicans pick him as the candidate again, could he run again?
You can run again, but you'd have to.
And then could he be impeached again?
As much of this circus the Democrats want to make our Constitution, we'll just have to see how far that they're willing to go. I'm telling you right now, on the merit, there is no way, if people are fully informed about the circumstances here, that this rises to the level that it's being pursued.
Can I say something?
All right. Let's hear it. This is good.
Russians.
Oh, geez.
Oh, you're talking to Vladimir right now?
Russian people.
Careful, because this joke has been done before and always taken seriously.
I'm thinking about running against Senator Mike Lee.
You're thinking about it?
This is
a joke, so I should wait for the punchline? Okay.
I'm thinking about running against Senator Mike Lee. I know you have access to everything involving him. Every email, all of his staff papers, everything that's done. Will you send them to me? I'll be a good friend of Russia, if you know what I mean. That's where the president has put us. No. And why not? That's exactly what it is. We cannot be bidding and challenging foreign countries to give us
about
information.
A Republican, it's what is leaked that is discussed. If something's leaked on a Democrat, it's who leaked it that is discussed.
I'm saying anybody that does that.
It's a completely different world. If you leak something, was it a Russian that put Trump's tax returns on the front steps of the New York Times? Should we look at who did that, or were the leaked tax returns important? If it's a Republican, it's what is leaked. If it's a Democrat, it's who leaked it. And so it's forget what information was provided, who tried to provide it. If it's a Republican, it's we don't really care where it came from. Look at what was provided. It is not just, again, this goes back to just, let's let life be a two-way street. Let's pick a path on how we want to treat people of both parties. The selective outrage, selective logic, it's what's killing this country, and it's making Americans sick of politics, I think, in record proportion.
Or maybe it's Trump.
Or maybe it's Trump. It's all exhausting. And you said leak so many times that, do you know what's in my head right now?
You need a bathroom break?
No.
Okay, sorry.
Those bladder
that was
leakage
rude.
commercials where they
that.
say they'll send you adult diapers in the mail. And they'll come in.
There goes this segment for
So anyhow,
television.
that's who we're going to
done.
be brought to you by.
I saw one that turns
Depends.
liquid into
Depends.
gel so it doesn't leak.
Oh, this
Well,
is...
that's what diapers are. They're little
We've jumped the
gelatinous
shark,
gels that
folks.
like basically
We're the
get
producers.
bigger.
Fade to black. We're
I
out
know,
of here.
seriously. Oh my
no.
gosh. Wow, we definitely have jumped the
It's a
shark
Friday,
for sure. It is
yes.
a Friday. The impeachment inquiry won't stop here, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it in the weeks to come. So thanks so much for being part of our day here. Tell your friends about us. Subscribe, and have a great weekend.
Subscribe.
Yes, do it.